What you just heard was the sound of a $10,000 antique Masson plate. It was the fifth one that week. 10-year-old Serafina Vance, the billionaire's daughter, had a reputation. She had reduced hardened military tutors to tears and sent Ivy League psychologists running. She was a Hurac in a Chanel dress, a problem no amount of money could solve. The press called her the uncontrollable heirs. Her father, Alistair Vance, was at his breaking point. He had tried everything except her, a 23-year-old waitress named Clara Jenkins, who was 2 months behind on rent and didn't know the difference between Mason and Melamin. And she was about to do the one thing no one else dared. She was about to say no. The Cornerstone Bistro wasn't the kind of place you read about in luxury magazines, but it had its own quiet dignity. Located just far enough from Fifth Avenue to be affordable, it served lawyers on a lunch break and artists nursing a single coffee for hours. Clara Jenkins knew them all. At 23, she moved with an efficiency that bordered on grace. Her mind often miles away, calculating the interest on her student loans or dissecting a theory from the psychology textbook she kept under the counter. Clara was an observer. She saw the tremor in a businessman's hand before he ordered a double espresso, the worn-out look of a new mother before she asked for the check. Her life was a study in controlled chaos. 2 jobs, night classes at Hunter College, and an apartment shared with 2 other aspiring somethings. She was tired, but she wasn't broken. The name Alistair Vance was one she only knew from the covers of Forbes and the Wall Street Journal. He was the king of Silicon Alley, a man who had built Vance Industries from a garage algorithm into a global tech empire. He was also famously a recluse since his wife Isabella had died in a tragic riding accident 2 years prior. But the name Serafina Vance was known by a different, more notorious circle: the exasperated staff of New York's elite. The girl was a legend. Expelled from the Pembroke Academy for setting off the fire alarm with a high-powered laser, fired a staff of 12, including a Michelin star chef, by claiming they were poisoning the air. She was 10 years old and had more confirmed victories against authority than a small-time dictator. Clara knew all this because Mr. Henderson, a regular who managed a high-end nanny service, would often sit at her counter, nursing a scotch and lamenting his inability to staff the Vance penthouse. "The girl's a viper, Clara," he'd muttered just last week. "Smart as a whip, but pure venom. Vance is offering $500,000 a year. No takers, not anymore." It was a rainy Tuesday, the bistro half empty when the door chimed. A man in a simple, impeccably tailored black suit stepped inside, followed by a small girl who seemed to vibrate with a furious energy. Clara recognized him instantly. Alistair Vance looked less like a king and more like a man held hostage. His eyes, famous for their piercing intensity in boardrooms, were exhausted. The girl, Serafina, was a stark contrast. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail, and she wore a private school uniform that Clara recognized as belonging to the prestigious Dalton School. Clearly, she'd already landed somewhere new. "A table for 2, Alistair said, his voice quiet. "Of course, sir. Right this way," Clara said, leading them to a corner booth. The moment they sat, the performance began. "This seat is damp," Serafina announced, her voice high and clear. "It's not, Sarah," Alistair sighed, not even looking. "It is," she insisted. "I can feel it, it's disgusting. And this light," she said, pointing to the Art Deco fixture above. "It's buzzing, it's giving me a headache, I can't eat here. Serafina, please, just for 20 minutes. "No, this water," she said, lifting the glass Clara had just filled. "It tastes like metal. Are you trying to poison me?" Clara watched, not with annoyance but with a strange clinical fascination. This wasn't a tantrum, it was a script. It was a structured, deliberate campaign of control. The girl wasn't angry, she was working. "I can bring you bottled water, miss," Clara offered calmly. Serafina narrowed her eyes, unused to the lack of fluster. "I don't want bottled water. I want the water you get at the penthouse from the springs in Norway. This is just tap." "It is," Clara agreed, not rising to the bait. "It's New York's finest, filtered twice." Alistair looked up, surprised. Clara held his gaze for a second, then turned back to his daughter. "My name is Clara. I'll be taking care of you. Can I get you a different glass of our finest tap water?" Serafina stared at her. The air crackled. This was the moment where presumably nannies burst into tears or managers rushed over with apologies. Clara just stood there, notepad in hand, patient as a stone. Serafina said, her voice dropping, want a grilled cheese, but I want it on 9-grain bread, not white. And I want the cheese to be Gruyere, but not aged Gruyere, and the crusts cut off, not in triangles and squares. And if it's even a little bit brown, I'm sending it back. All right, Clara said, writing it down. 9-grain, young Gruyere, crusts off squares, not too brown, got it. And for you, sir. Alistair Vance looked at Clara like he was seeing a ghost. Just a black coffee, coming right up. Clara walked away. She could feel the girl's eyes on her back. 10 minutes later she returned. She placed the coffee before Alistair and a plate in front of Serafina. It was perfect. 9-grain bread, lightly toasted with 4 perfect pale yellow squares of sandwich. Serafina inspected it. She picked one up. She sniffed it. She turned it over. She put it back down. Then with a sudden violent motion she swiped her arm across the table, sending the plate, the sandwich, and her full glass of water crashing onto the floor. The bistro went silent. It was brown, Serafina hissed, her face pale. Alistair Vance slumped in his seat, the defeat total. He put his head in his hands. I'm sorry, he whispered to the floor. I'm so sorry. Clara didn't look at Alistair. She didn't look at the shattered plate. She looked right at Serafina. Clara felt the eyes of the entire restaurant on her. She saw her manager, Dave, storming out of the kitchen, his face a thundercloud. This was it. This was the moment she got fired for a spoiled brat's tantrum. Mr. Vance, Dave began, but Clara put a hand up. A small gesture that somehow stopped him cold. She knelt, grabbing a stack of napkins from a nearby station. She didn't start cleaning the big obvious mess. She picked up a single wet crust of bread from the floor.